Okay, welcome to the Hallows Eve edition. I'm Stasia.
I'm Jake with Ranger-Yoga.
That's right. And today we are going to talk about Dark Night of the Soul because it's kind of Halloween-y. All right, so last video we talked about the first chakra, kind of in preparation. So the second chakra is actually where the Dark Night of the Soul takes place. So when Kundalini penetrates that particular psychic center, which is, located in the pelvis, but it's actually a layer of our consciousness, right? Part of our psyche. It is actually crucial for you to reach higher states of consciousness, and you can't complete your awakening journey without going through this stuff. But this is like the hard stuff. This is the karmic stuff. This is like ancestral stuff and all like the shadow elements, repressed emotional stuff and all that. So it's like the main stuff movies are made out of, like the biggest like ish that you have to overcome is, what breaks you down, takes you to the ground, overcome your demons kind of thing. That's Dark Night of the Soul stuff.
So the only time I've ever heard the Dark Night of the Soul is in that book by Geoff Thompson, the Divine CEO.
Huh.
And it's like,
I haven't read that.
Yeah, this is like my frame of reference. It's just like basically you're on some kind of a path. You're not living like whatever your like purpose is, which is kind of a wishy-washy thing. Your purpose can really be anything, I guess, but like there is like your personal dharma, and if you go about not doing it long enough, your life will start to crumble, and then eventually you'll hit a point where it's like, all right, I need to give something up. You do, and then you like get on your path, onto your dharma, and start like going forward into things. But I don't think that simplified version is like,
but that is a Kundalini awakening, because you'll be going along doing like a program life. I'm doing everything I was told to do, la da 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 da, dormant Kundalini. Then Kundalini awakens and you have like a vision. What am I doing? Like, this isn't the life that I'm supposed to be living. I'm not doing it. So that crumbling, that tower moment, if you're talking about tarot, like that moment where you realize you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're actually doing what someone else wanted you to do, or what you were told to do, or what you thought was right. That crumbling is the awakening Kundalini, and it is it penetrating into your second chakra, because you start.
So it technically is like the right way to describe a dark night of the soul.
Yeah, because it's only dark because you were attached to all that stuff, right? So if you were just like, oh yeah, I hated all that stuff anyway, whatever, and you just like went to your new life, it'd be easy, but that's not really how we work as humans.
So it's almost like an invitation to like step into like onto the right path, so to speak.
Yeah, because I mean, usually it entails either you're going to leave your job, or you lose your house, or your relationship breaks up, or you have a health crisis, because all those things were built up against your previous paradigm, like what you thought you're supposed to be doing, this perfect life, or this way you're supposed to be eating. So when you actually bump into your true nature, then now you have to rearrange your life so it's in alignment. And that period of being out of alignment to in alignment is like, the second chakra is described as water, the first chakra is earth, and it's like why you see the lotus blossom as a symbol of awakened consciousness, because the lotus actually has to grow through like dirty, mucky, muddy water. It has its root all the way down in the mud, but it makes its way up, and then it like blooms beautifully at the top of the water. So that watery place, that mucky, murky space, is all of like the patterns and the ancestral, wounds, or whatever happened, in our family line, what we've been taught and passed down to us to do and to behave and how to have relationship and all this stuff. So as we're navigating out of that and to clear water, to become clear, to utilize the Kundalini to have greater vision, it can feel like you're stuck in it, like stuck in the mud. It's hard to make the shifts, just because like your brain patterns are just, they're set up for your old reality.
So it's a crisis in life that is like a point where, okay, something's got to change, basically. So can you have like multiple dark nights of the soul?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Usually the first one is going to be the worst one because you have no reference point. So you don't know that this is a thing that needs to happen. So like every time I hit one of these places, it's actually like less and less and less dark night, right? Because you're just like, oh, I have to just shift everything, and you just do it. But the first time you have to do it, it's like it really does crumble your previous life, you know, and you have to like let go of a bunch of stuff. And
yeah, it sounds like if well, if I can switch topics, I guess, but similarities. You read through Mark Manson's stuff, and he has like plenty of articles about values and whatnot. And that's what that whole book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, was really about.
it's a great book.
But one of the things that he says in there is like your values basically determine like how happy or how content you are with like whatever you're doing in your life. And if you find yourself unhappy but you're unwilling to change your values, then like you're gonna have problems. And in order to change your values, you have to like first recognize that your values have failed, right? That sounds awfully resonant to what like a dark night of the soul is. It's just like I'm currently doing these things. These are the things that like I hold dearest onto, or I like unconsciously hold onto, that are kind of driving me to live a life that's not making me happy, you know.
Right.
And then like, okay, I see that something is wrong and something needs to change. Let's do some self-reflection and like,
yeah, because usually we were given those values by our predecessors or like our environment, right?
yeah.
Rarely as children do we discover what our values are personally, right? So in our growing process, we have to evaluate, wait, like I held this as a value, but is that really my value, or is that a value that was given to me? Is that a correct value for me, you know? And rearranging your value system. I definitely have done a lot of work with that too, and I remember realizing that I had a certain thing as a high value, but all my time was not spent on that thing. And so then I recognized that must not be my highest value right now, because I think it is, but I'm actually not spending my time doing that. So it's actually not. So it's an elusive value. And if you think it's a value that you're not achieving, but you're not putting anything toward it, then there's a misalignment there, right? So
like we all want to believe like, yeah, I'm a disciplined person, I wake up and I value this and this and this. It's like, yeah, but do you actually spend any time doing it? No, it's clearly not a value that you have.
Right.
So if you just look at it, how you're actually spending your time, like, oh well, it seems to be that my value is like laying around all day, or like my value is not exercising and is in fact like eating junk food. Like,
well, and some of that could be interpreted, if you look at it non-judgmentally, as like you value free time, or you value free agency to, you know, maybe you couldn't lay around and eat junk food when you were a kid, and so you now like you value that personal choice to be able to do what you want. And so if you can actually begin to value what your values are presently, which kind of takes us to existential kink again, like if you look at how you are spending your time and you look at, why would I spend my time that way? What is that saying about me?
Yeah, what is it giving me? Because like everything that you do is like achieving something for you, and like,
or you wouldn't do it. Yeah. So then that can help you navigate through the dark night of the soul. That's where shadow work is really helpful. Is where you're looking at what is haunting me, you know, to use some Halloween terms. What is haunting me from my subconscious, from the dark recesses, you know, like what are the things that I actually want to look at and bring to the forefront? You know, like if you are sick, for example, you find yourself with a health condition and you look at how you're eating, and you know, you find that you actually want to have health be a value, but you look at maybe it hasn't been a value, then you go back and like you can look at loving yourself for going ahead and deciding to eat junk food because it was a comfort food. Like I needed comfort, so I gave myself this food for a while, and I needed to do that, and so I can love that part of me too. But now my value needs to shift to where like I'm valuing something different. But we can't really shift a value without honoring the one we had, you know, that got us here.
Yeah, I mean, just to simplify, I guess, what all that sounded like to me is like, so if you want to quit smoking cigarettes, right? And like you really want to quit smoking cigarettes, all you're gonna do is like cause yourself more stress by like fucking punishing yourself and like, oh my god, I fucking hate that I smoke cigarettes, like, you know. And instead of just like being able to surrender to like, okay, you know what, this is where I'm at. Like I got to start where I am, not where I want to be, and the best way to start is not with like self-hatred and self-loathing over something, although that is like a really good motivator to change in your life. You know, it's like you got to be able to forgive yourself and just like be okay with where you are, you know.
Yeah, and find some way to really lovingly accept that part of yourself, because if you really do want to change, like you really want to stop smoking, for example, I mean, some people can just be like, I'm done, and stop and have a really strong resolve. But the place where a lot of people get caught up is they're only stopping now because of the self-loathing, but that's not a really great motivating factor. Because you can hate yourself for anything, you know. Like, you just transfer it to a new thing.
Eventually you do have to like switch your attitude, and there's like a whole bunch of different variables that you kind of got to dive into when you're like just in the example of smoking. Like, okay, you know what, I had to have a cigarette today, like I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, I enjoyed it, like I'm cool with it, and that kind of lets you be like more centered and going forward in the.
And why was I using it? Like I was using it as a smokescreen, as a protector, as a sacred space. Like I needed to not be bombarded by people. I needed to check in with myself, you know.
If you can figure out like what that thing like gives you in your life, then usually like that's a great way to identify like, oh, you know what, I've actually got like a desire for these things, and then either by repressing that desire or like not acknowledging it, right? I found myself like doing this other thing. I don't think that what I just said there makes any sense.
But you're making me think of in my book, The Chocolate Fast, I actually talk about how anything that we're doing is like trying to give us access to this bliss hit. Like we're all like seeking this place where we feel one, we feel unified, we feel like the place that we keep talking about, this God consciousness, self. And so no matter what we're using as an outlet, that is actually the underlying motivating cause, whether you're smoking or drinking or cussing or, you know, like doing porn, like watching porn or whatever it is, like you're looking for that hit where you just feel like, even if it's not real, even if it's not like the legit bliss that you want, it's still like you're still seeking for it, because everyone is seeking to find that place. And so like my thing in the book is if you just give yourself like moments where you're giving yourself that thing. So if it's smoking a cigarette, you're like, I'm gonna give myself this moment with the cigarette as a passage to myself, and like make it ceremonial, like make it a ritual for yourself in the moment where like, right now I'm tuning into me and this present moment, and this is how I'm doing it. And then you actually start to lose a taste for the thing that's not actually, it's not actually the cigarette that's giving it. That's just like your key in. That's your moment where you're stepping away from, you know, all the things that bombard you, and you're using that as a key. Like any of those things we're using as a way to try to access that moment. And so just give it to yourself, you know, like Carolyn Lovewell, just give yourself the thing. And same with like, because this is an ancestral passage too, like a lot of these things are ancestral patterns. You know, maybe your ancestors were addicted to something, or, you know, and they passed a behavior down, and it could be subtle, like maybe they were addicted to something else, but they're still looking for that same self-fulfillment hit. And so it actually can generationally transfer, where you become the lineage breaker, right? You do lineage healing in a second chakra awakening. Like you're not only healing it for yourself, but you're sending like a wave back in time through the ancestors, and you're altering the DNA when you do this work.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
What else should people know about the dark night of the soul? I mean, the way like I'm trying to be in these like talks is more of like a student to a teacher, where like, okay, you have something to say and I want it to like make sense to me, and I feel like by being able to do that,
I like your
people get
questions.
more out of it.
Yeah, thank you.
So what I got out of this was like, if you're having a dark night of the soul, it's basically a moment where you recognize that like something in your life isn't working, and it's time to like reassess your values, if you want to think about it in like a simplified way, or just like there's something you need to let go of, or something you need to like change about yourself. But that can happen at like multiple times throughout your life, and will happen multiple times throughout your life, because like you're never perfect, and you're always going to be like set up with new challenges, and like, okay, like,
and we're always evolving or transforming into new parts. Yeah, so I like to think of, what I also want to talk about this today is there's nice iconology in different traditions, like the river Styx, for example, like leading to the underworld, and the, you know, you see this depiction of taking the dead on the river to the underworld. Bless you. So like the second chakra is water, and there, it is a death passage. It's a death gate to go through a dark night of the soul. You literally are like dying to a certain part of yourself. And that's why it can feel so difficult and so traumatic, and people can stay in that cycle for so long without like a proper third eye perspective.
Like a certain part of you is dying, an aspect of yourself.
And so say it's like for me, I grew up, you know, LDS, and I, you know, went through that whole thing, and then I went through my initial awakening, and it was like my whole youth and everything that I learned, that part of me died, and I didn't feel like her anymore. I even changed my name at that point, and I like that helped me to transition to a new phase. Now that part of you doesn't die permanently, because later in your life, part of the like integration work is going and recovering certain parts of yourself, and like reconstructing and integrating elements, right? But in the initial journey, you literally have to figure out what's not working and like put it in the ground. So it is like a funeral service in a way. It's, you know, like you are going to the underworld of self. You are in this dark passage where it's good to have a guide to lead you into that place. That's why you see that symbology in a lot of mythologies. There's someone that takes you to the underworld. There's a guide. Even like the Grim Reaper is said to come and get you, you know, whatever. But it's, you know, or Lady Death in the South American traditions. It's like this entity or this being. There's a guide for you to go into that realm, because you are coming back. Like there's a part of you that's coming back. Like you're not completely lost. You are being guided through a journey of transformation.
There's like two responses I have to that idea. Like one, just if you take mushrooms, which like honestly I feel like everybody in the world should be required to try psilocybin mushrooms a single time in their life, like just once. You know, that should absolutely be a requirement, because it is like a consciousness, like expanding substance in a way.
It is a sacrament.
You know, like it really is. And even just the fact that like there's a theory, the stoned ape theory, that like that's how like humans evolved into higher thinking creatures.
Yeah, it's the ape mushroom.
Like like even if that's not proven, the fact that we think that that's like a thing that mushrooms can cause should probably be a testament to like, all right, you know what, there's probably something to mushrooms that everybody has to benefit from.
Definitely.
They can be like, can get bad if you use them too much, you know, but like ultimately like they are a good thing. But a big thing that people experience with that is ego death, you know. And like anytime like I've gone through depression, like one really good mushroom trip, like out in the woods surrounded by nature, and just like getting like all that hardcore self-reflection that it gives you is like, okay, like I can get up and be like, okay, something inside me that was like causing me like pain and suffering has died, and like I'm a totally new person. So
yes,
that's kind of a cool tool.
Yeah, that takes you through it really quickly, where if you're going through it organically and yourself, it could last for a long time. So that's why I think those medicines can be really helpful sometimes.
Or it could be like super traumatic, or just like something that you absolutely don't want to like do and face, because we've all got things in us that are like too deep, where we're like, no, oh my god, I can't let
go
this
there.
thing go.
Yeah,
you know, so mushrooms are a really valuable tool, and
they just kind of push you through as long as you take enough.
I don't remember what the other thing was, but
Okay, maybe it'll resurface.
maybe. But now I'm just like thinking about this cool quote from somewhere in the Middle East that I heard is like about people who are like depressed or suicidal. It's like, you want to die, go throw yourself in the ocean and like try and drown yourself. You'll see yourself like struggling to survive. It's not that you want to die, it's that you want some part of you to die.
And some part of you is dying. I think that's the recognition, is we feel so akin to death because there is a part that is dying and we can identify it. And so we assume that's our whole self, but there is actually just a part of you.
Yeah. And if you like identify with too many like issues in yourself, or you like identify with like all of your thoughts and all of your emotions, this is where like I feel like acting is like such a super therapeutic tool for people that actually do it.
Yeah, sure.
Like Will Smith in his book said it pretty well, like a good summary of it. But it's like your attitudes and your emotions and all this different stuff that we all think is like a permanent thing within us. It's like, these are not permanent things about you. They are like characters that you can like wear as a costume, you know. And by being able to shift between things and be like, okay, I'm going to be this character now, cool, I'm going to let it go. Like, you get a lot more used to letting these like temporary experiences.
Role playing is awesome. Like, it's a really good practice that even when you're going through a transformation process, I like to encourage people to fully get into get in costume like you're in a funeral for yourself, like wear all black and like go through the whole thing. And then what wants to come out, like get a new wardrobe, like, you know, find a new persona that you want to try on, like try different things on yourself and see, because a lot of times we will stay in a box that we grew up in, or the things that were accepted socially, or what people who know us think we are. And we actually are held captive by people's belief about us, right? So it can be difficult to bust out of that and be like, no, I'm not that anymore, but we can.
For me, definitely like the two most useful things for being able to do that like without mushrooms were like, number one, acting. It was like, oh, okay, I have a choice over like how I feel about things, and I can like change as a person at any given moment. And then like with yoga, like I wouldn't say that anybody said this to me directly or explicitly, but it was like at any given moment, like every breath you take, like you are a new person. And if you can keep yourself in the present moment and like not remain attached to ideas about yourself, then like you are a new person every single second. And you're basically like, every time you face a fear, you know, you're dying a little bit inside. It feels like you're dying, but like that's a good thing. You're letting something that you don't want, like cowardice, to die and like be replaced with courage. That's just kind of my own experiences there. But.
And we have like so many mini deaths that we don't acknowledge. Like that was a good one, because actually every inhale is like a rebirth and every exhale is a death, right? And we actually shed molecules, cells, and things. Like we're constantly dying on all these different levels. In fact, every 7 years we're completely a different body, right? But then every night we go to sleep, that's a death. We wake up, that's a rebirth. And so if we can acknowledge all the little deaths that we have, then some of these seemingly more traumatic or bigger deaths can you know, be more handleable. And you actually start to befriend the death process. Like if you can befriend the death process and be like, oh, you're here again, death, great, we're gonna go through an awesome transformation. You know, like in the tarot, the death card people are afraid of, but it's actually a really exciting card to get. It's an exciting phase to be in, because you've reached like the end of something, and so that is a new beginning too. So anyway, so this time of year makes me think of this passage that it can be like, you know, dark and ghouly and scary, but it also is a passage, like this is the beginning of what I call the death passage from now till the solstice, the winter solstice, that we're going through a big shed time, and this is like the initiator this next 3 days here. And so if you are going through what you think is a dark night of the soul, then be comforted in knowing that this is the time, like with the seasons, if you're in the northern hemisphere, like the dying of the trees and the shedding of the leaves and the decay and all of that goes on, that's a mirror for us and what we can go through, and it prepares the earth for growing something new in the spring. Like it's the compost material that.
I can't tell you how many times like I've gone to a yoga class and like people have drawn like on that analogy of like, okay, well here you are, like every single year, you know, you got to be willing to like shed the leaves of like the past and like grow new ones. Which,
we do. I mean, and the things that aren't supposed to shed won't, but like there's a lot of stuff we try to hold on to, you know?
That was kind of a neat thing that I realized through like yoga and just like in trying to like find your like authentic self is like it's hard to like articulate it effectively when like I haven't been doing that, when I haven't had that like and that like profound experience with it for a long time. But it's like if you were to essentially like purify your ego, so to speak, like okay, I think that I'm this person, but like am I really this person? And just like separate yourself from your concept of yourself, and then like wonder like, okay, well who am I without these things? If you look to like what arises naturally within you, this is where improv is super useful. It's like, oh, like once I like get rid of all this stuff that like I believe that I am and I essentially like become absolutely nothing, there will be innate like natural responses and reactions in me to the world around me, and that's my true self. It's like the part of you that is always there and doesn't really die. Everything else is, you know, a temporary like mask that you wear or something else, you know?
Yeah, because that's your eternal nature. Like your eternal nature has elements that it's like, you know. And I think like our astrology or our human design or whatever like tend to point out to some of those things, because if you're really stripped down, you will find certain elements like naturally arise. And I think that's the thing people don't know how to think about when they feel like they're dying. They think they're going to lose everything they know about themselves, and they're going to like they're going to become a nobody, or they're, you know, like if a part of me is dying, then who am I? But that's where like trusting in the essential nature that who is really you is trying to come through. Like what's actually dying is the false you, is like, you know, the constructs that aren't really you. So
it was a good analogy for me. It was like you lose everything and you like, okay, well now I don't know where to go, but you start moving and it's like, oh, there was something like always there to begin with. Like I didn't actually need any of this other stuff, and over time, you know, it kind of built up like dirt on your shoes or something else, you know, like, okay, well, like if I get rid of this and I don't like have this idea about myself, like there will still be something there, you know, and in that way you can like reconnect to your authentic nature, you know?
I think poverty is such an awesome lesson for that. Like people that have to like learn poverty again and again, you realize that money is fluid. Like money flows. And if you get down to zero money, you'll never stay zero money forever. Like money will come again. Like it's impossible for you to go to zero and just stay flat at zero. Unless you just completely like go hide in an alley corner, and even then you probably still find a nickel on the ground, you know.
It's
like
live out in the woods like a caveman.
Yeah, but even still, like you'll find that you have what you need. Like the abundance shows up in nature, like food on the trees, like berries, like suddenly like abundance sprouts, you know. Like we trade what's of value, right? So if you go through the poverty experience, you start to realize that if you're at zero, you're not at zero. Like you're actually exactly the same as, you know, like you with money in the bank account. Like the
perspective has just changed.
Yeah, like you don't associate yourself as a person with money, or not, you know. Like if you can separate out, you realize, wow, even if I get rid of all my possessions, which I've done a lot, that I'm like, I still remain, like the essential me remains, and more things will be added unto it as I go along. But you actually can't even like keep things away. Like if you try to like get rid of everything, like stuff comes again. So like your essential nature is magnetic. Like your essential nature is like always bringing in what you need all the time. It's just that we get so cluttered with, you know, all the things that life puts on us, and like, you know, that ends up surrounding us, that we can't even find that essential nature. So these dark nights are actually purifications.
We are about at time.
We're right about at time. So I hope this was helpful for you, and if you are in a death passage, then take the time to honor that. It's phase, and it can be a beautiful thing. So.
Yeah, be willing to embrace death, and if you want to die, there's like, it's not you that wants to die. There's something in you that wants to die, or something that you want to let go of.
And if you are struggling with suicidal thoughts, please reach out for help. And if you need support during this time, please contact. You can reach me through Bliss in the House or my email, stasiabliss@gmail.com. And thank you, Jake, for being here.
It's very
Happy Hallows Eve.